In this first episode, I share my own change story about what it took to search for my father and find myself. Hello, welcome to A Change Mindset. I'm your host, June Love Young, and this podcast is about what it takes to push through fear and face change head on. We'll learn from change agents who've led extraordinary transformations in their life, their work, and the world. I hope their stories inspire you to be the agent of change your life deserves. This is A Change Mindset. Well, hello there. Welcome to this very first episode of A Change Mindset. I am so glad that you found your way here. And I hope that you find this podcast useful as you navigate and lead change in your own life. My name is June Love Young, and I have the pleasure of being your host. June is a common Filipino name for boys. It's short for Junior. I was born and raised in the Philippines. Oo, marunong ako mag-Tagalog to my Pinoy friends out there. And I'm a dad with two amazing teenage daughters who probably won't listen to this podcast because, well, one, it's not on TikTok, and two, wouldn't that just be so lame to listen to your dad's podcast? Oh, well, if you are listening, I love you very, very much. We live in Seattle, Washington, and I work at a company called Zoom, Z-U-M, which is a marketing communications change agency that I founded almost 11 years ago. We help organizations tell more aspirational, more emotive, more human stories. I love helping people and organizations tell their stories, which I think is the driving force behind this idea of a change mindset. We want to create a platform and a community where people like you and me can share our stories of change. Why do we want to do this? Because change is really hard. And so we hope that these stories of change can encourage and inspire others to push through fear and face change head on. Right off the bat, I want to be very, very clear and set expectations that I'm not some sort of expert on change, at least not any more than you are. I call myself an enthusiast of change, a student of change. Why? Why is this the case? Because I have led some massive changes in my life and my work. And to be honest, some of them have led to so much pain, so much loss, but in every case, always a step closer to my true self and a life lived in authenticity, not pretend. And at the end of the day, I believe this is the key to a fulfilling life. To thine own self be true. And so I think one of the gifts of change is the opportunity to be more real, to be more true to yourself. You know, change is a natural, inevitable part of life. It's like the ebb and flow of the ocean. Change is just part of the rhythm of human existence, isn't it? But here's the question. What does it look like to change well? To approach change with open eyes and fresh thinking and willing hearts, so that we can harness this motion of the ocean and use change to propel our lives forward. That's the question. How do we change well? I don't have the answer, but I'm very, very curious about it. And that's why we launched A Change Mindset. There's so much to learn about the dynamics of change and our human responses to it. And I think it'd be so boring to learn this on my own. So instead, I want to learn with our guests, and I want to learn with you. At the center of each episode, we feature a change story as told by our guest. For today's episode, I am the guest, so I get to tell my change story. And I have to admit, I am nervous. I'm nervous about doing this because I'm about to share with you a really hard story for me to tell. This is a story that I have not shared publicly. But I want to share this story with you today for reasons that will become clear later in this episode. So Here it goes. My change story begins in the kitchen, where my mom is about to slip up and blurt out a big family secret they never intended for me to find out. I'm 20 years old. I'm sitting in the kitchen with my mom. My dad and my brother are out of the house somewhere. Mom is upset at my dad about something. This is a common occurrence in our household. In the middle of our conversation, she accidentally slips and says, well, your dad wanted to split up years ago, and he would take his son and I would take mine. Wait, what? I ask, well, what do you mean by that? She tries to change the subject, but it's too late. She explains that my dad, this man whose name appears on my birth certificate, is actually not my biological father. I knew that my mom had worked in the United States before she married my dad. She was a nurse. There are pictures of her looking all glamorous and American-like. She looked like Jackie O. What I didn't know is that during that time, she fell in love with a young Pakistani doctor. The relationship was going well until she got pregnant. When she shared the news with him, he told her that he could not marry her, and she was devastated. She didn't want to raise me without a father, so she flew back to the Philippines, convinced my dad, who was an ex-boyfriend, to marry her right away and raise me as his son. She didn't want rejection and abandonment to be my story. She wanted me to know that I was born out of love, that I was wanted. I think that's why she gave me the middle name, Love. My mom is in tears as she's finishing the story in the kitchen. And then she pauses, waits for me to respond, and I'm just silent. I'm not sad, I'm not angry, I think I was just in shock. I remember getting up, walking to the bathroom, closing the door, and just looking at myself in the mirror. Tears start flowing. I've seen this face 1,000 times, of course, but this time feels altogether different. This time I'm staring at the face of a stranger. Deep down, I think I knew. I mean, not really, but yeah, there were clues. There were clues. I'm 6'3". I'm likely the tallest Filipino you'll ever meet. And also, I look like I'm from India or Pakistan. In fact, when I was growing up in the Philippines, the mean kids would call me this name, this derogatory term that's used to describe people of Indian origin. And probably the biggest clue I now realize is that my relationship with my dad has always been strained. Like I never felt that my dad liked me all that much. And he certainly liked my brother more than me. Any positive thing that I would bring home, like a really great report card or a trophy or accolades or whatever, it was never met with as much enthusiasm as when my brother would bring things home. And so I always felt that he favored my brother more than me. He had his son. My mom had hers.
Keep it away from me. The moon must see something I don't see.
As I look at that face in the mirror, I'm suddenly ashamed of what I see. Another father who is not pleased with me. I compose myself, I walk back to the kitchen, and I tell my mom we will never speak of this again. Not even with Dad, not even with my brother. I spent the next 10 years making sure no one found out this information. It was a dirty little secret. I was a dirty little secret. And I was terrified people would find out, especially the rest of my family. like my cousins. I didn't want my cousins to know this and realize that I'm not really their cousin, that I don't belong here. And so I just kept this information hidden until my dad passed away suddenly, surprisingly. I didn't even get to say goodbye. And that grieving process made me realize that if the same thing happened to my biological father, that I would regret it. I would regret not having had the chance to at least meet him. So one day in January, on a whim, really, I just start doing some Googling, and it actually didn't take that long to find him. I discovered where he lives, the names and ages of his wife and family, and the clinic that he works at in the middle of America. When I found this out, I instantly wanted to meet him. There were no pictures of him on the internet. And so part of the curiosity was just to see what he looks like. It was like a juicy mystery. And I wanted to see how it turns out. Who is this man? Is he anything like me? Is he the dad that I wish I had growing up? And maybe who knows? Maybe he's looking for me too. So I made it my New Year's resolution to meet this man and bring closure to my origin story. Well, that was my New Year's resolution for 7 years. I just couldn't do it. Like every time I tried, I just was gripped with fear and anxiety and shame around it. Just the thought of him turning me away was too painful to think about. I think what eventually changed my heart around this was that in 2017, I started seeing a therapist, in part to process the trauma from my childhood. I call my therapist Papa Smurf. That's not his name, but he looks like Papa Smurf. He's an older gentleman with white beard. And so I call him Papa Smurf. I don't call him Papa Smurf to his face. I just refer to him as Papa Smurf. So anyway, so Papa Smurf and I are working through a lot of my childhood issues. And of course, my biological father, that story comes up. And I tell him that I want to go meet this man. I want to do this. And through many, many sessions, he really helped me to get clear on why I wanted to meet this man, what my expectations are, what my desired outcomes are, and probably most importantly, how I would deal with the fallout if it didn't go well. I have to tell you that this process of clarifying my intention was a breakthrough for me because it reminded me that I am whole, that while I want to go meet this man and find closure to the story, I don't do that to complete myself. He does not complete me. I'm already complete. I am whole. And because of that, whatever the outcome, however he responds, I can handle it. I can hold myself and provide for myself the comfort and grace and peace that I need for that moment. So now I am clear about my intention. I feel confident and ready to face this change, but I get stuck because I don't know how to actually do it. Do I write a letter? Do I hire somebody to go meet him? I don't know how to do it. So I basically hem and haw for another year. And then I have dinner with my friend and colleague Priya at an Indian restaurant. And I tell her the story, and she looks at me in the eye and says, "You have to do this, June. You have to go see him. This is your story. This is your journey. You will not be at peace until you meet your father face to face. Just go. Stop thinking about it. Just do it."
I am the swelling sea. You're the moon pulling on me, saying all in time, all in good time, all in time, all in good time.
The next day, I decide to call up the clinic where my biological father works and ask if he was accepting new patients. And they said, yep. I remember this was a Monday when I called, and there was an appointment for Friday. And so I took that appointment. Then I hung up the phone and bought a plane ticket. I decided that my goal for this trip would be very simple. I just wanted to meet him, see his face, and hear his voice. That's it. So my plan was to just show up and see how it felt in the moment. I didn't have to share with him who I am. I could if it felt comfortable, but that would be all up to me in that moment. And I know this all sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, it's just fraught with a lot of risks. What could possibly go wrong here, right? And I don't disagree. In fact, I nearly changed my mind about a dozen times, but I finally make it to that small clinic in the middle of America. The waiting room is a scene from the 1980s. There was a smell, the decor, the music. I felt like I just entered a time machine. I'm checked in, led to the observation room, and told to wait for the doctor to come in. My heart is racing, as you can imagine. I feel nauseous. I text my daughters to let them know that I'm here. They text back saying, "Go, Dad, we love you." It's a strange, strange thing to know that the next person who walks into that door is the father you've been waiting to meet for a lifetime. The door opens and the doctor walks in. He's tall like me. His nose and lips are mine. He speaks with a gentle, reassuring voice. "How can I help you today?" he says. I take a deep breath, but no words come out. I don't actually know what to say. Then he says, "It's okay. How can I help you?" He sounds so kind, so gentle. I feel safe. So I decide to tell him. I decide to tell him who I am and why I came here. And I assure him, I don't want anything from you. I don't want any money or anything like that. I ramble. He just listens, calm, collected. I asked, "How are you doing with all this information?" And he says, "I'm fine. You see, I hoped someday we would meet, but I thought you were in the Philippines, so I didn't know how to find you. And so I'm glad you found me and came to see me." I am shocked. In all my prep work with Papa Smurf, I had not considered this as a possible scenario. I still can't quite believe it. But we end up having lunch at an Applebee's, and he tells me all about his family. And I tell him all about my girls, who are his first granddaughters. After lunch, we continue our conversation at a Starbucks. We talk for 4 hours. I feel like I've known him for forever. He seems more like me than either of my parents. His demeanor, the way he talks, the way he listens. He says he wants to visit Seattle and meet his granddaughters. When it's time to say goodbye, he gives me this warm, big old bear hug. I break down in tears. He kisses the back of my neck and comforts me. I already love him. We exchange email addresses so we can keep in touch. I ask him if I should refer to him as doctor or just his first name. And he says, "Well, if it's okay with you, I'd like you to call me Dad."
And I am a pendulum clock that swings, and you are ever so patient with me.
I'm walking on clouds as I head back to Seattle. I just could not have imagined that I would find a father who wants to have a relationship with me. I was no longer a dirty little secret. We email back and forth, swapping photos, stories, birthday cards, Father's Day greetings. I tell my girls all about him, how they have a great new grandpa. It was the perfect fairy tale ending, and I felt proud of myself for having pushed through the fear to go meet my father, not knowing how it would turn out. But I have to admit that part of me still felt like it was just too good to be true. And sure enough, it was. a few months after meeting my dad, he stopped responding to my emails. No explanation, just stopped, just fell off the face of the earth. I called the clinic anonymously to make sure that the doctor was okay, and he was there. He was fine. That was 3 years ago. I've reached out multiple times, but no response. And then after a while, I just stopped. I've been grieving this loss for some time now. It feels heavy and painful. It feels really different than when my dad died a decade ago. It's a grief that's hard for me to process because the person that I long for hasn't died. He just exists in a place where I am unwanted. I traveled out there to meet this man because I wanted closure. But what I found was a much bigger wound that's frankly really difficult for me to close. To this day, I ache, I hope, I rage. But what I want to do is let go. You know, it's not lost on me that he might actually end up hearing this podcast at some point. I kind of hope he does, because there are some things that I would want to say to him. I would say, Dad, I'm confused and hurt by what you did. I came to you with very little expectations. I told you that. But you drew me in and embraced me and made me want more. You asked me to call you Dad. And I may never know or understand why you abandoned me again, but I am choosing for myself to move on now. I don't regret coming to you because the few hours that we spent together were so sweet and so warm and so meaningful to me. And I'm going to cherish those memories in my heart forever. I came to see you, but who I found was myself. And I now know that this trip was what I needed for myself to realize that I'm not a dirty little secret, but someone a father would be lucky to have as his son. And that's something no one can ever take from me, not even you. And you know, I also realized that maybe you and I are not as alike as I thought. You see, I could never do what you're doing to me, to my daughters. I just couldn't. I loved them too much to just walk away and without any explanation, any warning. If I did that, I would worry so much that they thought I didn't love them. And I believe that when family needs you, you show up every time, no matter what. My mom taught me that. So, goodbye, Dad. I love you.
Some swift, strong tide, like the dawn.
Seen only time all in your good time.
Takes the darkness from the
Coming up, we reflect on this change story and how you might apply it to your own life.
all in time. All in good time.
So as I reflect on my change story, the thing that pops for me is this pursuit of closure. And I think a lot of people can relate to this longing to find closure to something that just feels unresolved or unexamined. What closure are you looking for in your own life? What's that thing that's keeping you from pursuing it? In my case, it was fear of rejection that was keeping me from pursuing my dream of meeting my father. Somehow I did it. It took many, many years and a lot of setbacks before I did, but somehow I pushed through that fear and just did it, just did the thing I knew I had to do. Of course, in the end, my worst nightmare, that thing I was most afraid of, actually came true. But you know what I discovered? I discovered that I'm strong enough to handle my worst nightmares. I thought rejection would break me, but no, it hasn't. Yes, it hurts like hell. Yes, I'm still picking up the pieces, but no, I am not broken. Not only did I survive this experience, but I feel like I've been transformed along the way. I mean, little did I know that pursuing this change in my life would ultimately change the very core of who I am. I am becoming a person who looks to myself, not to others, to define who I am. You know, this whole idea of dirty little secret, I had to break through that. I had to realize that that wasn't coming from my father. That was coming from me. I had to change that in myself. After meeting my dad, I found the courage to do another crazy, scary thing that I never thought I could do. I came out as a gay man. And then after that, I started a nonprofit to support LGBTQ youth, something I'd never done before. I've never started a nonprofit before. And I also fought a public battle against an organization that oppresses queer people. All these things that I never thought I was brave enough to do, I found capacity within myself to do that. And yes, each one of them brought new nightmares to deal with. And each time I got a little stronger, maybe even a little smarter, and a little more ready for the next big change that my heart calls me to lead. Having a changed mindset doesn't exempt you from pain and hardships. In fact, it might actually be the opposite. What it does do is enable you to live a life that's yours, not anyone else's. You free yourself from shame, self-doubt, compliance to others' expectations. You set yourself free, your true self. And that's the gift of a changed mindset. Agents of change, I leave you with this. Leading a big change in your life might just be the scariest thing you'll ever do. But it could also be the breakthrough your life needs. So don't give up. Don't give in. You are stronger than you think. And when you do cross that threshold and make it to the other side of change, I hope that you tell your story. Tell your story to your friends, your family, your coworkers, whoever will listen. Because I do think that telling our stories can help other people. As hard as it was for me to share my story today, I did it because I have a hunch that there's someone out there listening to this right now who needs to hear this story to help them write theirs. So please tell your story. And if you're up for it, share your story with us. We would love to hear it and share it with others as part of this movement we're calling A Changed Mindset. Just go to achangedmindset.com to learn more. And who knows, you might just change someone's life, including your own. Until next time, go in peace. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Changed Mindset. If you want to be inspired to lead change in your own life, head over to achangedmindset.com, where you can find more resources, tips, music, and a place where you can share your own change story. And please follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your pods, because you do not want to miss the amazing episodes coming up. A Changed Mindset is brought to you by Zoom Communications with music by Towers.